Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Petty Details of Auto Claims. I'm Jen, and Justin's on one side of me. And today we have a big subject to talk about, so I'm going to let him get after it.
Yep. So we're talking about diminished value denials, reasons why the insurance companies tell you that they won't pay for the diminished value. I wrote an article about this, so I'm just going to go down on one by one. First one is pretty big. They will tell you that you got to sell the vehicle. You haven't realized any loss until you sell the vehicle. If you think through that, it doesn't make any sense. The denial is implying that you can't determine the value of something that hasn't been sold. Therefore, that would apply to a total loss as well. You can't go back prior to the vehicle being totaled and sell it. So how do you know how much it's worth? That's just a logical fallacy. If you have to sell the vehicle, when does it count? You can't sell it immediately after it's wrecked. It's going to naturally depreciate over time. So that also is not how the law works. You don't have the benefit of time when you are a negligent party in a claim. You can't just delay and delay and delay and say that, okay, well, when you do sell it, then just let me know. That doesn't work.
Because, like
It's not, that's
Teslas, they
just,
can lose big time, like they have in the past, that kind of stuff.
yeah, it's a volatile market in Tesla over the last year, if you will. They've been up and down, and all the different pricings and things on stuff is crazy. They're hard. They're difficult to put these numbers on because of that. You have to look at the time that the loss occurred, and that's really what the legal side of it is. That if you need legal advice, you call an attorney, but the reality is the pattern jury charges in almost every state for property damages talk about immediately before and immediately after. And there's so much case law about this rule that it's ridiculous to even try to cite it because it's so clear. You calculate the damages at the time that they occur, not at some point in the future. So we can go into lots of other reasons logically about that. There's ways that you can respond to these denials, and it's a lot of it is just common sense. You got to think through what it is that they're saying and call them out on it. So if I do sell the vehicle, are you going to pay me the loss? They're not. They're going to tell you no. There's going to be another reason why they won't. So
Right.
that's one of the big ones, is
Yeah,
that
that's a big
you
one.
got to sell the vehicle. Then another big one, these are common, all of them are pretty common.
Yeah,
It's just an opinion. That's what they'll say. They'll say that it's just an opinion. That one is
all the
really
time.
irritating. Yeah, it's really irritating because an opinion from a layperson is one thing, but an opinion developed in a accepted, peer-reviewed method that's scientifically sound, based on proper methods and data, that is admissible evidence in court. And it's the same thing, for example, if you think about the manufacturer's suggested retail price of a vehicle. That's just an opinion of the manufacturer too. But
Right.
that's always used as data for the market value. How'd they come up with that? They're not explaining how they're coming up with the MSRP. It's just what they're asking for it based
Right.
on who knows what. That's the same thing as, you know, if you can't, so there's no law that says anything like that you can't recover damages based on an opinion. Another good example of why that's not good is like, what about future medical expenses on an injury claim? Those are always paid. Well, that's based on the opinion of a doctor, and it's
Right.
speculative in the future. And they pay those all the time, but they try to separate out a doctor and an appraiser, which I understand those are different, but they're both specialized fields. The doctor
Right.
has developed his opinion in accordance with medical guidelines and methodology. The same thing that I do when I develop an opinion of value. I'm using a methodology. I'm using a way of doing it that's generally accepted and peer reviewed throughout the United States and for the most part. So, it's just an opinion or it's speculative, it's just based on an opinion. That doesn't fly. It's an expert appraisal. That is the evidence you use when it goes to court, just like you get a doctor's statement of what's medically necessary and what the potential future medical would be. It's the exact same scenario. So
And what
go ahead.
irritates me is whenever they try to tell people, "Oh, go to 2 dealers and get them to write down their opinions." They're not gonna write down their opinions. That's just, like, adding them into the mix, and they don't wanna be added into the mix of some claim, you know? So, that's
You
silly.
you might can sweet you might talk one or two of
Here
them,
and there.
if you get to
Yeah.
know them, but they're told by their legal to not do that. They don't want to get dragged into a legal battle about diminished value and have their numbers being held to.
Yeah. Well,
So,
and it's hard. It's because it's like they're dealers, so they're in it to make money off your trade. So it's hard to even that out.
right? I mean, it's just crazy that types of things that the insurance carrier will tell you. And if you think through them logically, you'll figure out that they don't hold any water in most cases. So number three, basically they'll tell you that we don't believe in it, or that the repair, what are you talking about? We fixed the car. The repairs have been
You pick
done.
the shop.
There's yeah, there's no lost value here. Again, we're not talking about the repair quality on a vehicle. We're talking about the history of the vehicle. Now, the vehicle did not have an accident history, or we'll get to this a little bit more in a minute, but either it didn't have an accident history or it had a minor one a long time ago, maybe. But this accident, if it's substantial, is going to affect the value because it affects the desirability of the vehicle in the eyes of any reasonable consumer. If you knew that the vehicle had an accident history, it doesn't matter how good it looks and how the repair looks. The reasons
Right.
that's you can never tell without wrecking the vehicle again whether it's done properly. You might could pay a bunch of money to have another shop tear it down and do a post repair inspection on it. That's a good thing to do if you're feeling like the repair wasn't done. Get that addressed. That's a separate type of diminished value. That's repair related. So we're talking about just the pure market data about wrecked and repaired vehicles, that the repair is presumed to be done properly. And if
Hmm.
it's not done properly, that needs to be addressed separately from the inherent part of it. So
Right.
there's lots of reasons why that's a bogus issue as well.
Yeah.
The other things are, even if it is repaired perfectly, the repair procedures differ from the manufacturing process. You have cold seam, cold welding on Tesla on the seams, but when the repair happens, they rivet it in most cases because they can't, it's too expensive to duplicate the cold weld. And so there's a lot of different reasons why there's the tolerances are higher on a repair. You can be within 5 millimeters or 8 millimeters on a repair, but only five on a coming out of the factory. So and it's different for different manufacturers, but all across the board, you're allowed a little bit more room on the repair processes than the manufacturing processes, although the repair is stringent as well. It has to meet the manufacturer's method of repair, and it's the best you can repair it, but it's not the same as it was when it came out of the factory. The paint
Can't
thickness will
ever be
never
that
match.
again.
you
Yeah.
can there's always ways to tell one's been in a collision and repair. The best way is the paint thickness in most cases because it goes on and is baked on in a uniform manner all at once at the factory in most cases. So it's like that's a bogus reason that the repairs were done properly. Has nothing to
Hmm.
do with the fact that the history affects the value. Had one like this not too long ago, and this one's the silliest one. And I was like, why would you do this as an adjuster? But just not knowing the law, just telling you a lie, saying the law says we don't owe for it. The law says we don't owe for it. Well,
Yeah.
I got to be careful how I word this because it's not legal advice, but you can look this up yourself and talk to an attorney to confirm this. This is educational. That's not how liability works. And, you know, most of the states, or a good majority of the states, have adopted the restatement of torts from the American Law Institute. There's just general common law duty. The Constitution of each state gives you the right to file suit for negligence. If someone's negligent and they damage your person or your property, you can sue them for the negligence, and the damages that are a consequence of that negligence are recoverable. That's something that you would be able to recover in court in a lawsuit against a negligent party. So remember the first and third party, and this is about third party claims for the most part that we're talking
Right.
about. So third party claims for diminished value, these are the big ones that you get. So it's not allowed by law. First of all, there is case law in many, many states on it. And adjusters a lot of times don't understand the difference between a statute or an insurance bulletin or case law precedents. They don't understand that a lot of times. They're just not trained on the legal aspect of that. And they may say something to that effect out of ignorance, or may have been intentionally trained that there's no law on it. That's just not true. The one I'm thinking about was in Arizona, and I mean, it was a big case. It's Oliver versus Henry, and that it was a big case talking about it. And it's like, how did this adjuster not know that there totally is a law
Like,
that says
who's going
that?
around
And
telling them that?
yeah,
Like, who is that?
and in that case, and almost any other case you read about diminished value, the primary evidence and the preferred evidence is appraisal from an expert appraiser to document how much the loss is. That's the evidence that you use. So it's crazy that they would say that, but I see that all the time.
Just blatant misstatements in writing.
Right. And just to expand on that, sometimes they'll say there is no law, and that might be true in the case of some states, that there hasn't been a case go up the ladder to an appeals court or a Supreme Court that is on the record showing that diminished value is owed, but the general principles of law still apply, and it's a negligence, it's a claim for damages that you can prove damages by appraisal, and that's the value of property that is damaged. How do you determine what the value is? You get it appraised. So
Hmm.
it's a silly argument all the way around. The other thing about there is no law, well, there is no law about total losses either that says how you have to settle those or how much you have to pay for those. So why don't you deny all that? There's no law about how to calculate an injury claim. You know, it's like that's just a bogus argument, but they'll use it.
Yeah.
And if you don't think through it, know how to respond to it, they might stump you. So
Yeah.
that was 4 on 4. So I have like 8 or 9. Invalid denial number 5 is you haven't repaired the car. You gotta fix the car first before you can get diminished value. And that one's a little trickier. It's not seen as often. They don't use that as often because most people wait till the repair is done anyway because they're just
Yeah.
waiting to get their car back, and they're not thinking about that diminished value. They don't A lot of people just don't think about that until after it's repaired, and then they're like, wait a minute. They get to thinking about, I have a car now that's wrecked, and now when I go, if I want to get rid of it and get into one that doesn't have a wreck, I'm losing this value. So a lot of times this doesn't matter that they say the vehicle hasn't been repaired because most of the time it is repaired, but it's again goes back to the same thing. You don't have to sell the car, you don't have to repair the vehicle. The Department of Insurance in Texas, they had a good clarification letter that we can use, and some of these other ones, we'll pull up the stuff as
Yeah,
we're
we'll
talking
put in the
about it.
description, like I'll put a link to the article and
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
So
Yeah.
that's number five. Hasn't been repaired. It's a bogus denial. It's 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 a delay
It's just
tactic.
hard to
Is what that
fight.
is.
Yeah, it's a delay tactic. It's just hard. Like we always say, it takes too much energy though to fight it. Especially if you're in the repair process. It's like just don't waste your energy,
Yeah.
even though that's not valid.
When you make a demand for diminished value, they're gonna probably try to wait on the repair to get finished, especially if you're real early in the process, and that's
Yeah,
worth it for you to wait too, just in case there's something hidden that
supplements.
that
Yeah,
was right. Because the severity matters in diminished value. The
yeah.
worse the damage, the more worrisome the
More
repair
it suffers.
is for, yeah. Okay, number six. Yeah, this one, I've seen this one from attorneys, defense attorneys. It's crazy. Attorney Monty Day pointed this out too on some of his correspondences. But the reason that this attorney for the insurance company gave is, look, there's no law that says that you have to tell them the car was in a wreck when you sell it. This one's is not, you don't have to disclose that. And we're not going to put it on Carfax either. So what are you talking about? How are you going to, why is it going to lose value? So it's like, really, that boils down to just lie, is what they're telling you.
Ethics.
Just lie to the next person. I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
of course there's a law about that. It's called fraud. You can't just lie to somebody when you're selling property to them. You need to be honest with them about it.
right.
So that one's pretty clear why that's bogus.
And we've got that in writing.
But
Like,
they
was
will
that an
use these.
attorney or an adjuster that did that?
That multiple times I've seen that. An attorney's done it.
Claims
Some of the form
manager.
letters they've changed. Well, the insurance carriers have attorneys and high-level specialists that write these responses that are denials and give all of these good-sounding reasons why they don't owe for it, or why it's not a real claim or anything like that.
And they don't know when they're reading it. They're like, oh, I guess they don't owe for it because of this. It's like,
Well, they
no.
don't look at most adjusters are told to use this letter, and they just have a boilerplate letter that goes out first when they first get a DV claim. State Farm has a habit of just sending out a denial basically right off the bat and seeing how you respond. So the trick with any of these denials is to investigate and respond to it and not let it just sit
Hmm.
there and be a denial. Point out some of
Yeah.
these reasons why that's not a valid denial. That's bogus. Just because you
And have
say
a
I
good
don't have to tell
expert.
somebody.
Have a good
Yeah,
expert so that you know what to do, because that's the hard part is the knowing what to do when they do this.
yeah. I mean, we can't negotiate your claim for you, but having a credible appraisal and a known expert that's good on the stand, that's not going to be tripped up with these types of arguments, that helps. Insurance carriers get to know the people that are consistently winning in court, and you have to do that. You have to fight some of these. Sometimes, if they're not being reasonable, you have to litigate the matter. It's hard to
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
You have to find an attorney sometimes, or file a small claim suit on your own. We've talked about some of that stuff. So
Yeah.
that was number six. So let's see.
Yeah. I think
Number
we're on
seven.
7.
So this one is interesting. In fact, I made a comment on LinkedIn not too long ago because there actually was a state that agreed with this. Okay, Massachusetts is who it was. They had a policy of insurance. So here's the reason they reasoning. And I've had Infinity do this in California, and I've had other carriers say this same thing. Well, diminished value damages aren't covered under our liability policy on a third party claim. It's a little complicated of a denial, so it makes it hard for a general accident victim, a layman that's just been wrecked into, to respond to that. How do you respond when they just
Right.
say, well, that's not covered? People are tricked into believing that they have an insurance claim when in reality they have a pending lawsuit against the negligent driver, and they're just the beneficiary of that driver's liability policy. And so again, it comes back to tort theory and negligence theory with regards to that, and common law negligence. Diminished value is a consequence of a direct consequence of being involved in a collision with another vehicle and having that collision repaired. It's a direct result of that. So it is not covered in some instances now, which is crazy to me because that means this insurance company is selling a policy that won't cover for damages that occurred in an accident that you're liable for, which that's
Yeah.
what the safety responsibility laws are for, is to say that, look, you must be able to pay for damages that you cause. That's why in some states that they call it mandatory insurance, and others it's safety and financial responsibility law, which most people just buy insurance to comply with that. It's
Mm-hmm.
silly to say that, oh yeah, you bought insurance to comply with the safety and financial responsibility law, but if you wreck into somebody, we're not going to pay for these damages because we don't
Yeah, good
like
luck
them.
on that
And
one.
the insurance,
Yeah.
yeah, well, if you take that person to court, you're gonna recover diminished value if you have good evidence, and the insurance company may not pay it, but let that happen a few times and let the people that have to pay that out of their own pocket, even though they have insurance, they're not going to understand that. That's going to turn into a class action lawsuit, I would
Mm.
expect, as going against public policy or something that it doesn't pass the
Doesn't
test
pass the
of
smell
how that
test.
no, it doesn't work like that. It shouldn't work like that. There is some decisions in certain states where it just doesn't go along with logic. So it's crazy, that one. But
Yeah.
not covered under liability policy, 90%, vast majority of states, that's a lie. Just a complete lie. You can't exclude liability damages. You're liable for them or you're not, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
matter of how you prove them. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're at fault, you're going to recover diminished value in the vast majority of states in a negligence action. That was number seven. Number
Mm-hmm.
eight, let's see here. Yeah,
Hear this
this
one a
one,
lot.
yeah, and it's a good argument for the insurance companies to use in most cases because it's hard for a jury to understand the difference between an appraisal of value and the technical aspect of that and just the idea of diminished value. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's easy to act like this is a good argument, but in a prior loss, they'll just say it's already had
I
a
was gonna
wreck
say, what's the
history.
argument? Yeah, it's been in
Yeah,
an
that's what they'll
accident.
say. Yeah, they'll just say, well, it's already been in a wreck. How can it lose that, stigma
Sometimes,
a
even when
second
there's a
time?
glass claim, they try that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, insurance companies have access to a great database that non-insurance companies don't have access to called ISO. Most insurance companies are a member of ISO, and it's a fraud detection tool and a claims database of every claim that's ever been reported to an insurance company. They can look that up, and sometimes they don't investigate it. They'll say, aha, I found a hit on ISO, and they don't look at it, and maybe it was a theft claim and it was recovered the next morning with no damages on it. They didn't even look to see, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe it was a glass claim where they had a chip or something repaired on the windshield or something
Yeah,
like
we've had
that.
that before,
That,
and they dug their heels
yeah,
in too. That guy had to fight hard.
I mean, we've been to court numerous times on second cases, on second losses.
You hate
Had a
them.
I don't like to take them on. I took one on a while back that ended up going all the way to the Supreme Court on appeal. They didn't hear the case, but it was there pending, and we responded back and forth. That was a second loss. It was on a Corvette, and
Mm,
they were similar losses. The reality is one loss is bad enough, two is worse. Now that this
yeah.
car's just getting worse and worse, and you have to calculate that in a manner that you can show that data. It can lose value twice. It already had lost value, but now it got wrecked again. It's lost even more value. And so it's got
Mhm.
2 accident histories, and this one was in the same area of damages too, rear-ended twice. He had it in the
In a
shop for
Corvette.
repair, and when he left the repair facility, he got rear-ended again right after he left the repair facility. And it was crazy,
Do you
it was
remember that
crazy.
one, the doctor that we helped, and he had two Ferraris, and one got hit in an alleyway by a garbage truck, like drugged down an alleyway, and then like 2 weeks later, his
Yeah.
other Ferrari got hit in a parking garage, like bad damages on both. It was horrible. It's like first world problems, but still, it was terrible.
It's pretty bad when you have it. It's crazy. You think it's not very common, and I guess it's not in the to get in a wreck immediately when you have a car. But I mean, we've had. I think the record is that we had a car that got wrecked with 39 miles on it. They hadn't even got home from the dealership with their
Was that
car.
that Rolls
You
Royce?
know, no, I don't. It wasn't a Rolls. It was
There
a
was one
normal
where
kind of
the guy
car.
left with it and didn't even have it insured yet and got in a wreck in a Rolls. So we did that for the Scottsdale dealership.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah. It
it's
was,
crazy, It's
well,
like
and
if
that
that happens,
doctor with
I
the
mean, there's
Ferraris, like he had to go all the way to trial. Like they had to file suit on both of his cases, and he has Ferraris. That it's like hard to say that there's no diminished value on a Ferrari. So it just goes to show.
I mean, yeah, it's crazy. Lots of Ferrari purchasers buy one for an investment. They'll buy it and
Yeah.
barely drive it, and and I believe me, we've looked at that extensively, and I've watched that Ferrari market pretty closely because I've had a lot of those cases with. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just what it is, It's a
Yep.
luxury vehicles and exotics lose more
Saw that.
the type of customer that buys them. You had mentioned, let's see, yeah, so they'll say it's too old to
Yes, too
have
many
diminished
miles or
value.
too old. Yeah.
All right, we don't consider diminished value on vehicles that are older than 6 years old or that have over 100,000 miles. We'll get
Right.
into where they're getting that from at later, but of course that's not true. And again, the way that you can figure these denials or bogus out is logic. Logic. Okay, what if I have a 1966 Ford Mustang? You know, what if I
Exactly.
have
Yes.
a
That
you know
Bronco, the Ford
What if I have
Bronco.
a Torino? Yeah, or 1960 Bronco or a 1969 Torino or any classic or antique vehicle that just doesn't make any sense at all,
Yeah, or
and
a
it's
really
like,
high valued vehicle whenever they're saying it's too old, like a
yeah,
1992 Porsche. It's
it's
like all
just
those. It's like, come
yeah,
on.
it's just a made up reason. There's no
Yeah.
rhyme or reason for having that because the age of a vehicle, although that's a factor in the value, it doesn't mean it can't lose value just because it's old, or
Right.
older, if you will. The value is the value. And if you
Yeah.
gain an accident history and you didn't have one before, it affects the value. So
Right. You gain
it's
that
just
perception.
crazy.
Yeah.
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 I mean, I'm sure we'll get into these more, we'll do some more on these
Yeah.
diminished
Diving in
value
deeper on just
denials, and
one. Yeah.
yeah, and maybe I'll go through better some of what the logic is behind it with, like, how do you respond to that,
Or low
how I would
offers, going into
respond.
the types of
Yeah.
offers and what they base it on, that kind of
Well,
thing.
yeah, that's a good point because that'll be one of our next ones is when you get a low offer on diminished value and how to deal with that and how to think
Yeah.
about that, and like the C formula.
Yeah.
I'll do a whole thing on that explains what that is, how insurance companies try to leverage it, whether it's even something that's a valid way of looking at diminished value and all of that. We'll get into a deeper dive on that
Look, I'm like
with
the vampires on Twilight right now, sparkling. So, in my window.
with the sunlight coming through.
Yes. It's gorgeous,
Do you
darling.
have? Did I forget any of them? I'm
I
trying to
don't
think
think
if I
so. I
forgot any.
mean,
I'm looking at that
the
old
prior
article that I
accident
wrote. I
thing
need to
is the
update it.
irritating one because a lot of people like they're like, oh no, I bought this vehicle with a clean Carfax, da, da, da. And so when that pops up and they didn't know about it, that's a real that happens a lot. So
We have one right now that she was like, I want to be on your, we have one just like that right now where it's a total loss and the Carfax shows two wrecks on the vehicle. And she's
right,
like, no, we've owned it ever since it was brand new. It's only ever been in one other prior loss, and it was in a parking lot, and she got a scratch on her bumper, and
yeah,
they fixed it, you know. And so it might have a little tiny bit of diminished value from that, but it was just a parking lot scratch. And they
right.
are trying to act like, and then
Nah,
so what I figured out too is then, you know, a year later there was another accident reported, and she's like, no, there's that. I mean, I know that one. That's the parking lot one, but that one, no, that didn't happen. And what we figured out by talking to her is that that was the day it took almost a year on that case to get for her to get paid on that claim. And so nearly a year later, the insurance company paid the claim and it went on Carfax again when it was paid. And so it happened and
enraging.
then it went on Carfax again after it got paid. And so it looked like two accidents. And that was the other appraiser was arguing that. And I had to dig and dig to figure out why is it showing that? Because I believe the owner is it was a super low value car. I mean, low mileage car because it was a little old lady, if you will, that whole thing that you think about where it's like, man, I found a cherry. It was sitting in a garage and little old lady barely drove it and this
Yeah,
really was that kind of a case, you know. I think it's a Camry, is what it was, and it was just really low miles for its age. Like it had something like 35,000 miles, and it was a 2002, you know.
yeah,
And
and it had
so
been flooded,
it's
right? Or like it had had flood
yeah,
damage or
I think
something.
that's right.
Yeah,
Those numbers are close, but they're not. They're not. Don't hold me to those
yeah.
if we look it up. But
Let me write that down on
I'll
my
probably,
list.
we'll probably have her on because it'll demonstrate a few different things. You know, with
Yeah.
appraisal clause, bad Carfax data. That's happened a lot. In fact, I have a tag in my system about that, about Carfax putting data
Tracking those
on there
cases.
that's not accurate, and they will not change it. They will not. They will
I spent
no
hours
matter
on the
what
phone trying to
evidence
help
that you
this
give them.
woman one time. I mean, like just trying to get somebody on the phone that could make a decision. Nope. Nope. Not going to
Yeah,
happen. Nope.
yeah. In the face of clear evidence that that's an improper record that they're relying on, would not change it. And I think we end up referring her to an attorney because I mean, come on, Carfax, you're adding a history that's not there, and
That's
it
going to
affects
cost
the
them
value that directly affects
$10,000. I mean,
and you won't correct it, you know. And so now if they try to trade their vehicle or sell it to anybody, it's got a bad Carfax. That's a lie, you know. And so
right.
Carfax is a
Oh my
whole nother
gosh.
thing. They're
That would
you
send
know
me
you got
over
to
the
know where they
edge.
get their data. They get their data from people that are members of Carfax network, like dealerships and some insurance companies will report to Carfax, and then they get data from police reports. So that's really the three sources where they can get data is somebody that subscribes to Carfax as like a dealer or a repair facility or an insurance company, and then also the police records that you can look at and
Yeah.
find histories, and you can do that on your own under
Yeah.
public records and things like that a lot of times. So but yeah,
There's a lot of them. I mean, these same
yeah,
types of
just trying to
denials pop
think.
up all the time.
Yeah, and I mean we'll get into again the low
Offers.
offers and things like that because that opens up a whole nother element of it. Then you're getting into, okay, there's another appraiser that they hired, and
Yeah.
why are the two appraiser, one of them says, you know, 1,000 and the other one says 9,000. How why? And
Who's
that's
right?
why you need a good expert. You need a good expert in those cases that can defend how they're doing the appraisal and explain it in a way that it's easy to understand and that passes muster. You have to be able to explain that in court and back it up with enough evidence that it's accepted, you know?
Yeah.
You just have to. It's just one of those things, and we'll get into that too at some point. I'll have an attorney on about that. I was talking to a couple of the ones that we have, and it's like, yeah, we need to sit down and talk about the technical aspect of what is required in court to prove this.
Yeah.
How do you prove it? And it's different
And
for
how do you go to
state by
small
state.
claims? And yeah.
So I guess that's it on the denials, the types of
Yeah, I think
denials.
that was a
But
good
yeah,
overview.
tune in next time. We'll
Yeah.
we'll keep on adding to these.
Yeah, we will. And I'll put a link to the article in the description. And if you want to make a comment about a denial that maybe you've gotten and you want us to talk about it, leave a comment on our video and we'll talk about that in one of our next videos. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for your support. And we'll see you on the next one.